Please welcome outspoken Australian Paul Stoddart. Have a seat. Good to see you, Paul.
Good to be here.
We couldn't not have you on as you were here. You were always a very outspoken, colourful character who spoke his mind about Formula One and its good bits and its bad bits. I think Formula One misses people like you. Do you miss Formula One?
I do, actually. I mean, they were the greatest 10 years I can remember ever having, and we had a lot of fun. We told it as it was, and some people sort of sometimes thought that there was no place for the smaller teams and the characters in Formula One, but we all made up part of the show, and I think we proved it isn't always easy, but we spoke our mind and we got the job done.
I mean, look, you gave Mark Webber his break, and look what he's gone on to. You must have followed Mark last year with a real sense of pride.
Yeah, I still stay in touch with Mark, and obviously before him, we gave Fernando Alonso his break. And,
absolutely, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and having Fernando having 2 world championships, no doubt he's going to go on to another one. It was an interesting race in Abu Dhabi because obviously 2 out of the 3 title contenders were ex-Minardi drivers that I actually introduced, and obviously the 3rd driver that was in for the championship, the one who ultimately won it, Sebastian, of course won the one and only Minardi race ever in Toro Rosso.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's right. It's all fitting into place nicely. So what have you been up to since you quit Formula One?
I did 2 years or a year and a half in Champ Car, and we were pretty successsul there. We sort of runner-up in the championship, and it was actually good to see that you're at the other end of the spectrum instead of being the sort of tail-end Charlies. We were front runners in Champ Car and winning races and picking up plenty of trophies, but Champ Car merged with IndyCar, and I kind of felt that oval racing wasn't really me, so I stood back and watched with interest what's happened since.
Do you think now that American single-seater racing has unified, and it would seem successfully, is it something that you'd look at again?
I think it has. It definitely is more successful now as one championship, but a real lesson is to be learned there. It's that you can't divide racing series, and many years Formula One was discussed about breakaway series and other championships being set up, but there is only one Formula One, and globally it is the premier motoring sport event. It always will be, and America has recovered. Certainly IndyCar now is stronger than Champ Car and IRL were separately, but of course they let NASCAR take over in all those years of fighting with each other, and now NASCAR's come out as a dominant force.
You mentioned breakaway in Formula One. As more of a sort of privateer team and team owner, did you feel that you had a strong voice in those discussions? Did you want that to happen? I know you were fundamentally after big change in Formula One because it was going the wrong way, and
it was pretty unfair at the time. I mean, we were competing on less than 10% of the budgets of those that we were competing with, and yet still we did an interesting comparison the other day. We actually compared if the point system were how it is now with points down to 10th place. Minardi would have scored so many points in those 5 years. As it is, we sort of did pretty good in 2002, but we did struggle. And I was always out there for trying to get an equal share of the revenues of Formula One so that the little guys had a chance. And you do need money. Formula One just consumes money.
Yeah. What do you make of the, quote, little guys now? They came in for quite a lot of flack, didn't they, last year? Because it's so easy. It's so easy to point the finger and, look, you're nowhere.
They had no time. I mean, the way that those 3 entries were given out, people didn't know they had them literally till the last minute. And by the last minute, they had 3 months to do their cars. And I know what that's like. We had 6 weeks and 3 days to do our cars from when I bought the team to when we had to perform in Melbourne. And it's nigh on impossible to do. But most of those teams, perhaps not one of them, but the other 2 were well funded. And I know the budget of one of the teams, I won't say which one, but it was in excess of $100 million. Believe me, we only dreamt of budgets like that. The highest budget we ever had was 28 mil.
$100 million?
That's one of the 3 new teams. And they didn't score a point. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do this year in their second year. And it's always, people say your second year is the toughest year, but in actual fact, your second year, given the talent of people like Mike Gascoigne and we've just seen Nick Worth you had on before, it's going to be interesting to see how they do in the second year, because that's what really is going to tell you.
What do you make of the Lotus setup? Or should I say Renault, or should I say Fernandez, or should I say...
Well, I know Tony Fernandez quite well. He was a minor sponsor with us in Minardi in '01, and he runs a very successful airline called AirAsia, another one of my passions. So, yeah, he's a very entrepreneurial guy. He's a serious player, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. And, you know, Tony will go on with the team of people that he's got to be quite successful. Now, what do I make of the whole Malaysia, Danny Bahar, Team Lotus, Lotus Renault, the Lotus F1, Lotus Group name? I just hope they get it all sorted out, because I know all of the players involved in this. Danny Bahar, of course, he's before being Lotus and Proton, was Red Bull's number 2, who I actually sold Minardi to, and it was Danny I did the deal with. So there's some interesting personalities in it all. There can only be one winner with the Lotus name. I think and I hope that before we get into the season that becomes clear, because you don't want the politics. You know, politics are nicely out of Formula One now, and it's quite good to just see everybody concentrating on the racing. I think the diversion over the Lotus name could be well served if it's sorted before we get to the first race in Bahrain.
What do you make about the technical direction that Formula One's going in? The road to, we had some great races last year, and we got more change this year. And
yeah, we had some fantastic races, and I mean, what started out, if everybody remembers the first race in Bahrain, and I was one of the ones that actually thought we were going to be in for a boring season. We'd lost refueling.
We all did, didn't we?
Yeah, and yet by the time we got to Melbourne, anything was going to be, you know, boring, which is not a word you could use. And of course, to see so many different people lead the championship, for it to change so many times, quality drivers in Lewis and Jensen, 2 former world champions, getting on as teammates in the team. Ferrari's resurgence. Fernando won the first race, then they went nowhere. From Silverstone, they were contenders all the way back. To see Mark Webber, obviously near and dear to my heart, you know, so close, but not quite get there. Sebastian, who probably should have won the title 4 times over. You know, to see engine failures in the closing stages of laps. To see mistakes that were made in places like Turkey, you know, what a stupid overtaking move that was. It was a truly, truly exciting season, and everyone knocked the point system. You know, why give points down to 10th place? Too big a gap, 25 to 18 to 15. It actually produced one of the most exciting championships in the last decade or 2.
I knew I could rely on you to have plenty to say. You're keeping an eye on it closely. Never say never. Paul Stoddart back in Formula One.
Especially when you know, I took a lot of stick in those years for running at the back of the field, and yet, as I said earlier, Minardi's points were greater than any of the new teams that came in. So never say never.
Good to see you, Paul. Thanks for talking to us. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Stoddart.